Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to the podcast the great goalie, Larry Quinn. Larry, welcome to the show.
Damon, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know it's been a while, but do you remember your very first save in goal, the very first time you jumped into goal?
No. I was 10, like when I first played in a formal league, almost 11. I do remember my first practice, and like I had goalie tryouts, and it was me and two other kids, and it was against the fence for the outfield wall of a baseball field. And, it was probably 3 or 4 feet high. And whoever got whoever they thought was playing best was going to get to take the stick home. They had one stick. And I guess I played better than the other two. So I got to take the stick home. And I never had a goalie stick before. I had kind of played in the backyard with my older brothers and my younger brother with a wooden defenseman stick. So it was a little bigger than the traditional wooden stick, but it wasn't as big as a wooden goalie stick. So I'd never used a goalie stick before. So I got it the first day, and except for 2 games that year, I played goalie every game throughout my entire career.
Oh, interesting. So you grew up on Long Island, right?
Yes,
Levittown, kind of a hotbed of lacrosse. You got 2 older brothers kind of teaching you the game. Is that, were you at the very beginning, were you just kind of relying on your instincts to play goalie, or how did you learn that position growing up?
I don't know. I'm not really sure. It was just, and it was actually 3 older brothers and 1 younger brother who played at that point. But, there was some coaching back then. It was not real sophisticated. It was, at that point, most coaches probably hadn't played lacrosse.
Yeah.
I was lucky. We had a guy, Rick Nash, who had played Fairleigh Dickinson, was my first coach. So he taught me kind of the rudiments of playing goalie, and my older brothers, they always are experts. So they were able to tell me some stuff, but it was, try and catch the ball, try and stop the ball.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't a lot in, the mantra of stepping to the ball was always spoken. Not something I learned later on, really not to follow.
You learn not to follow.
Yeah, I think, just blindly stepping at the ball was not a great idea.
Yeah. It is funny how, there's all this technique and there's all this stuff that goes into it, but just at the end of the day, like, it is see the ball, catch the ball. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you throw some kids in goal and you start going, all right, do this, do that, do this, do that. And you're just overwhelming them. And I've seen some kids have some success, like at the very beginning, when all they're thinking about is just catch the ball. And then all of a sudden you teach them all this technique and they kind of go down a little bit because now they're overthinking in their head. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And when I have coached, it's taken me a little while to figure that out. But yeah, less is more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess at what point did you kind of realize, like, hey, I'm pretty good at making saves. I could play, I could maybe play lacrosse at the next level.
We were always pretty good teams. Levittown had a good youth program. So I don't think I ever lost more than a game the 4 years of what we called midget lacrosse back then. And then I think in 9th grade, we played on the freshman team. We were, again, 1 loss, undefeated. And I mean, generally I was the only goalie on the team. So, people told you were good. You couldn't necessarily believe them because they just wanted you to stay in there. But 10th grade, I actually played varsity and JV. So I got to play a lot of games, and JV, we were pretty good. Varsity, we were not very good. And then Bill Tierney ended up taking the job at my high school my junior year. And a lot of the players from that good JV team moved up, and we had a good season, but two of my older brothers, or three of my older brothers, had played lacrosse in college. So it was always kind of an idea I'd go to college, but whether I could play at the highest levels, you always dream of that, but seriously entertaining it, probably not until after my junior year in high school. And Bill Tierney said, you're going to get recruited. Where do you want to go? And I really had no serious idea. I mean, Hopkins and Cornell, or schools that had won championships, Maryland, Carolina hadn't won one yet. So it really wasn't until the summer before my senior year in high school that I said, because then you start getting some letters from these schools, and that's when you think, okay, maybe I can go somewhere.
Yeah. Wow, what an amazing experience to have Bill Tierney as a high school coach. I just interviewed maybe 3 episodes ago Scott Bacigalupo, and we talked tremendously about Bill Tierney, obviously, because he coached him at Princeton and had such amazing experiences. Were there some lessons that Bill taught you, Coach Tierney taught you in high school that kind of carried with you throughout your career?
Of course. I mean, he grew up, our families grew up around the block from each other, and were friends. And he was my gym teacher in like 4th and 5th grade. So, I've known him, as he said in the Hall of Fame or all county dinner one year. He says, I've known this guy since he was in diapers. So a lot of the goalie stuff, I don't remember him telling me much other than some stuff that I ended up, like when I got to Hopkins, they said, don't do it that way. But just kind of the lessons about how to prepare and how to be ready for a game, and then respecting your opponent, and kind of just the fundamentals of being an athlete, and about working hard and things like that. He was just such a tremendous coach and leader. And it was, for me, him coming to because it was his high school where he had gone and played baseball, but he came back and he coached. To me, it just opened so many doors for me. And, all his little sayings and witticisms and things, some of which are not repeatable on this podcast, but, I still remember them, and some of them I use today.
Nice. Love it. That's awesome. What was it about Hopkins for you that ultimately made you decide to go there?
Well, I wanted to try and go play lacrosse, as high a level as possible. I was also looking to go to a good school. So, and then back then, if a school had recruited a goalie the year before, a lot of them weren't going to recruit you. And they'd contact you and say, look, I just got this guy. So, Virginia and Maryland, they were out. I'd gone on visits to a couple of the Ivy League schools, Brown, Penn. I'd looked at Carolina, but they had Tommy Sears, and they hadn't won yet on my recruiting trip, but they were going to win that year. And there were a couple guys from my high school there, and they spoke pretty highly of him, and probably think it'd be tough to start there. And I just thought, that was kind of too far from home for me. Then, oddly, I looked at Duke, because my recruiting trip to Hopkins wasn't until February of my senior year.
Pretty late.
And then I went on a trip to Duke and watched their first game in early March. And I'm one of 10 kids, so obviously money was a big factor. And Bill Tierney tried to help me leverage my offer from Duke to get a better deal at Hopkins. And I said, well, this is Hopkins. Go ahead, go to Duke. The world has changed in 40 years. And to me, it was just kind of the best combination of lacrosse and a good education. And I liked the guys when I went on my recruiting trip. I had a good time, and I probably committed in mid-April.
Awesome. And when you got there, was that kind of your first taste of getting, I don't know, some specific goalie coaching? I think you mentioned when you got there, they're like, yeah, don't do it this way. Who were those? Who'd you learn from there, and kind of what are some things that they taught you that you learned?
Right. Well, I mean, I got a little bit here and there because one of my older brothers, Christopher, played lacrosse at CW Post. So when he was a freshman, that was the first year I played lacrosse. He used to take us and he lived at home and he commuted. He would take me and my brother Robert to practice with him a lot, and we were the ball boys. So I got to watch their practices and back up the cage and see their goalies warm up and kind of absorb some of the coaching there. And I'd have some coaches who were friends of, goalies who were friends of the coaches I had growing up, would work with you here and there. And in high school, I mean, I had the same guy, Jerry Hall, whose brother Doug played at Carolina, was a first team All-American, used to shoot on me for 2 years at high school. And, he taught me some stuff, but it was not until I got to Hopkins where it got very technical. Jerry Pfeiffer, who was the goalie coach there, really good coach on technique and mechanics. We butted heads. We joke about it now, but, I was a kind of typical Long Island guy. I knew everything. And, I fought a lot of what he tried to teach me. And he fought a lot of the things I wanted to do. And the first year was a process of trying to reach that kind of happy medium.
Interesting. Do you remember some of those things? Like, were you more interested in playing a high arc or a deep arc? Was it that kind of things, or what were some of those things?
Yeah.
I'm so curious.
Well, like one thing, I was taught before I got to Hopkins to bring your feet together. And, at Hopkins, it was, no, you keep your feet apart. You never bring your feet together. You want to stay balanced. And that made sense to me. That one I kind of accepted. But just, yes, they wanted you to play on a, lower, flatter arc.
Yeah.
And you can get away in high school and cheat by kind of coming out higher in the crease and stuffing people. And, I was, in high school, 6'1.5", 6'2". So when I came out, I mean, I was skinny as a rail, but I could still come out and cover some ground and take away the angle that way and get away with it. I couldn't get away with that in college. And Jerry Pfeiffer and Henry Ciccarone, who was my first coach at Hopkins, the emphasis was on staying on the pipe, because the defense was designed to drive people down the alleys and take away the middle of the field. So most of the shots are going to be coming where you should be on the pipe and make it hard for them, make them try and shoot across their body and across your body and go for the far pipe. So that took me a little while, until, my sophomore year. I got in a game because the starting goalie got hurt and we ended up losing, and I had came off the pipe in overtime and got beat inside. And Ciccarone let me know in practice the next day that if I had stayed on the GD pipe, we would have won the game. And I never came off the pipe after that.
I love it. I love it. And so your sophomore year, you take over the starting role, and did you kind of keep going with it and ride it out for the rest of your career, or how'd that work?
No, like when I got recruited, Henry Ciccarone was the head coach, and he told me he didn't believe in starting freshman goalies because he thought that was the hardest position to transition from high school to college. And he was very upfront about it. And I wasn't thrilled, but I understood. He said, you can still have a chance of getting the job. But so I played a little bit my first year. There were 2 games where the starting goalie got taken out. And I got to play first round of playoffs. We were down 6-1 and I went in and we ended up winning like 14-9 or something. And then my sophomore year was going to be, I was a sophomore. The starter was a senior, the starter from the year before, and it was going to be an open competition. And he went with the senior in the beginning of the year. And maybe 5 games in, so it was probably the 6th game. We were playing down at Carolina it was muddy grass field. The starter got hurt. We were down by a goal early 4th quarter, maybe late 3rd. I go in, we end up getting to overtime. I think I gave up 3 or 4 goals. I can't remember, but we were down a man. I made a save. And the rule back then, was when you were down a man, don't cheap the ball. If you don't find anybody on the inbounds clear, you just lob it just short of the midfield line. And we'll battle for the ground ball. Mm-hmm. Well, I did it perfectly. The problem was the theory is the ball's supposed to bounce a little, but it was so muddy, it just kind of stuck. They ended up picking up the ball, came in and scored off my left shoulder as I was off the pipe. And so then the guy was hurt. So I started for 4 games. My first start was actually the 100th anniversary game for Hopkins lacrosse. Wow. Which was pretty cool, as a dopey sophomore. And then we beat Army, Maryland, Navy, and Delaware. And the coach told me before the Delaware game that I was going to be the starter for the rest of the year. And we beat Delaware like 15-10 or something up there on a Wednesday afternoon game. Take the bus up. It's kind of towards the end of the season. The weather's getting nice. And, they had a big crowd. I mean, they didn't play in the stadium back then. They just played on a grass field outside their stadium with ropes around, and the people were lined up and sitting behind the goal, which would never happen today. But yeah, and as a team, we did not play particularly well. I didn't have a great game. I don't think I played terribly, but we win. And then the next day in practice, I gave up 2 goals on some drill. And next thing I know, the guy who had been starting is with the first team and I'm with the second team. And Ciccarone told me, he had a gut feeling he was going with the senior. So yeah, I wasn't really thrilled. I didn't, I played a few minutes the rest of the season at the end of games. And we ended up losing the national championship to Syracuse in '83 when we were up 12-5. So then, I started the next 2 years after that, but I did not start my entire sophomore year.
Yeah. What does that do? What does that do to your confidence? Because obviously, like, the more confidence lacrosse goalies can play with, like, the better you're going to be, And when you kind of get a little taste of the action, and then now you're back to being the number 2. Like, what's going through your mind at that point?
Well, I don't think I ever lacked for confidence, and it didn't really shake my confidence that much because I thought I deserved that starting job.
Mm-hmm.
It ticked me off, and I brooded for a little while, but I talked to Ciccarone and he kind of explained his thinking, and then I'm like, okay. I said, all right, I'll live with it. I went out to practice, and my goalie coach, Pfeiffer, said, I heard you talk to Coach Chick, and I'm like, yeah, because I said, look, his decision, I have to accept it. He told me, he said, don't accept it, prove him wrong. Mm. And which really helped me kind of psychologically. I'm like, okay, don't feel sorry for yourself. Just show him that he was wrong. And, I was still pretty angry because I didn't really play the rest of the year, and we ended up losing. And I felt like if I had played, we would have won, but it helped drive me the next 2 years.
Yeah. Love it. You mentioned having that, I never hurt for lack of confidence. Is that a Long Island thing? Is that growing up with all those brothers type of thing? Or where do you think that comes from?
A little of both of those things you mentioned, having some success pretty early on, playing on good teams. I played on some, even in, youth and high school, I played on some really good teams, and, the goalie gets an outsized amount of blame when things go wrong and an outsized amount of credit when things go well. And so we were pretty good. So I probably got more credit than I deserved. And, at that age, you don't realize it's more than you deserve, and you think it's you. And so those kind of things help you believe that you can do this. And I was not the fastest guy in the world. I wasn't the strongest guy in the world, but I could stand in and I can catch lacrosse balls. And I knew I could do that.
Mm-hmm. Love it. And so going into the '84 season, were you still fighting for, that was your junior year, and now you're like, the starting role is mine, or
I mean, we had a freshman coming in, but I was not too concerned that, because I actually had thoughts of transferring just because I was unhappy, not having played, but then realized it would be kind of stupid having paid my dues, and now here's a chance to play, and I knew we were going to be good.
Yeah.
But I made sure, not having played and sat, I made sure I never relaxed, and took anything for granted.
Mm.
So, I mean, I always kind of liked practice, but I made sure, I really didn't let up. And it was, even after we won in 84, 85, we 84 were undefeated national champs. I realized I only have a year left, and I missed out on in my view, some opportunities, and let's take advantage of this one. So, it, as much as I would not encourage having to sit, it did help me in some respects. I learned from watching other goalies and watching the team and understanding the concept of what we did defensively and things like that. But it was a pretty good teacher.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a super important point that you're bringing up, that people need to really understand. Like, your lacrosse experience in college goes really fast, and, just embracing those moments and really not letting up, because it's going to be gone before you know it. And they're the best years of your life. So I think every goalie should really take that to heart. What you just said right there, that was pretty strong, I think.
Yeah. I mean, not just goalies. I mean,
Good point.
Goalie's a little different because generally only one plays. So,
Mm-hmm.
you're a midfielder, you can get a run, and attackman, et cetera. But you don't, there's a chance you're going to spend some time in the pine, and it's, and when you get your opportunity, you better make sure you make the most of it.
Yeah. Love it. When did you first realize, was there a certain point in that 84 season when you guys realized, like, wow, we're doing something kind of special here?
Well, back then, I mean, the idea at Hopkins was, you go there was one goal. It was to win a national championship.
Mm.
Getting to the finals, getting to the that didn't mean anything. And the seniors on that team at that point were they would have been the only class since the NCAA tournament had started not to win a national championship, and lost in 3 straight national championships. So the pressure that they put on, there's some external, but it was mostly internal pressure that we've got to win. And we came really close. I mean, those guys came close in 81 when Carolina beat them by a goal. And, there was Jeff Cook's one shot went through the net that was clearly a goal, and the refs missed it. And Hopkins ends up losing by 1. And there were 2 goals just after the whistle that were pretty close, but I think they got those calls right. And then to lose to Carolina or Syracuse the next year, or no, then we lost to Carolina in 82, 7-5 down in Charlottesville. And then we lose to Syracuse in 83 by 17-16 when we were up by 7. So these guys, I mean, all of us, but especially the seniors, were very motivated. Mm. And we knew we would be good, and we were good early on. But we really, and the credit to the seniors, Willie Odenthal and Rich Glancy, Peter Scott, they never let us relax and take it for granted, because they weren't going to leave without a championship. Mm. So, I think we knew going in we were good. But I can't remember if there's any one game where we really turned it on. I mean, we'll say right before the playoffs started, I think we played Rutgers or somebody in a night game. And it was it might've been 10-0 at the end of the first quarter. Mm. And Rutgers was a pretty good team. And we were just on fire. And we could do nothing wrong. And it was like everything kind of came together. And that was probably the first time, like, wow, we could be really special.
Yeah. It's interesting that it sounds like, instead of feeling that you put a lot of internal pressure on yourself, like seniors last year, they haven't won one, that whole story. But instead of you as a goalie, like feeling that pressure, it kind of sounds like you guys flipped it and used that as motivation. Like you felt motivated to win these guys a championship, as opposed to like feeling this heavy pressure of like, oh man, I got to win these guys a championship. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah. I mean, there was a little bit of the pressure. You felt like, we've got it, but yes, we wanted to do it for them and for ourselves as well. And I will say there was a sense of relief when we won, but it was not as great as the sense of exhilaration. And Ciccarone had left by then. Don Zimmerman had taken over, but I'll tell you, in the 4 years I played there, I never went into any game thinking we'd lose. I mean, we were good, and we were really well prepared and well schooled. I mean, we had, back then we had like 9 coaches, and half of them were in the Hall of Fame, and every little nuance of the game we were drilled on, and we were almost every game. There may be 1 or 2 times where somebody we played had a wrinkle that we weren't prepared for, but we were always so well prepared. And it's great going into a game knowing
that. 100%. Yeah, 100%. It gives you so much confidence. And when you can play with confidence, that's awesome. I wanted to try something. We'll see if this works. I've got the 84 championship game. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to show you a couple plays, and I thought maybe we could like kind of talk about it a little bit. Does that sound good?
Sure.
All right. Let me share my screen. Oh wait, hang on. I got to share the audio too. Share sound. Where is it? Right here. Can you see this?
Yeah, it's a little small, but
yeah,
I've seen it before, so I'm sure I can remember it.
Yeah, right. So there's one play right here.
And you see Krumenacher all over him. Syracuse, a great advocate of the back door. This is Tim Nelson, All-American.
You yell. I think that's you right there yelling, "Get up on him!" And I was curious, like, kind of talking about your communication style, because to me, that's so. I love it. I love it. It's so Long Island to me, and it's like, but were you a big communicator in the goal? I mean, was that a big part of your game?
Yeah, I mean, it had to be. I mean, I was when I showed up as a freshman, they would complain about my lack of communication, and because growing up, it was really more about just telling where the ball is, front right, back right, front center. When I got to Hopkins, it was, you need to talk to the defenseman and tell them what you want them to do and where you want them to be. So, get up on him. I would do a lot of, get your stick on his gloves. He's good right there. We had a call squeeze, because our defense was predicated on, as I said earlier, driving guys down the alley from up top and from behind, don't give him the top side, make him turn on an inside roll, slide across. So my job was kind of directing the defense to kind of make sure guys were in the right spot so we could do that. And it's hard for a defenseman, especially when you got the back to the, when you're behind the goal and you don't see what's going on. You kind of have to talk to them, let them know where they are with spacing and things like that. Mm-hmm. So it was preached quite a bit at Hopkins, and I was not great at it when I started, but I got better.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, well, it's great for the young goalies to hear like the types of communication that you can do. And you're saying get up on him, like bother him, be a pest, like get into his body, like, and sure enough, like if I let this play go, like
Nelson,
bam, stick check, and there you go. So, yeah, you end up winning that possession, which is awesome. The next one I wanted to take a look at.
Well, it helps to have a Hall of Fame defender.
Yeah, that always helps, right? That always helps. The next play I want to take a look at is at 2 minutes here.
Picked off in front by Quinn on the goal. 3 goals has taken a 3-0 lead. Brad Cox, 26, Dave Desco. There's Timmy Nelson against DiTommaso. Again, that mano-a-mano. Picked off in front by Quinn on the center again.
So one thing, when you look at goalies of your era, like the shafts, the goalie shafts, really long, right? And you see like a lot of guys that play now have like much shorter shaft, and some guys just use an attack shaft. Like they just go super short.
Right.
I imagine you had that longer shaft. Like what was the theory? Was it to pick off passes? You just like the way it felt? Like, why did you use such a long shaft?
Well, I was probably taller than most goalies. But I kind of liked, they were much heavier, handles. I started off, I learned with it was a wooden shaft, and the stick was incredibly heavy when you're 11 years old. But I had a pretty heavy metal handle. And I liked kind of the weight, because when you went down it kind of whipped the stick around. When you went down on bounce shots and lower shots, when you brought the head of the stick down, the butt end would, and I don't know if it's, if it makes any sense or not, but it did.
Yeah, like a counterweight. It would kind of like swing it.
Yeah,
swing
it did.
around.
It felt to me like it helped. I also liked the heavier stick, because when the ball was loose around the crease, I had a tendency to, kind of slash at people. When I would go for the ball, but and I would go for the check, but I'd make sure people understood that, where they'd been standing. And kind of thirdly it was, yes, much easier to pick off passes. And I agree with you, like your assessment that there are a lot of goalies now that have such short handles, and I don't understand it, especially since sticks are so much lighter than they were. And it's kind of odd to me. And I've coached kids, and I can't get them to use the longer stick. But it is, it was not uncommon back then. Mine was probably a little longer than a lot of players used, but not much.
Yeah, love it. There's a couple plays we're gonna get into a little bit where we get some slashing, we get some like moving, leaving the crease in pursuit of that ground ball. There's one save that's, I think, right here at 2:30. I wanted to. Do you remember these saves, by the way? Like, how vividly do you remember this game? It was 20, almost 20, no, more than 20 years ago.
Yes, they're 30, 37, 36, 37. I have pretty good memory for the stuff. And then a couple of years ago when they did the Tewaaraton, I had to go back and look at this stuff, and I watched the game. And then we did Don Zimmerman did for, I think, the coaches convention, they did something on this game. So there were 4 or 5 of us reviewed it with him. So I know it much better now than I would have 10 years ago.
Got it. There's a save here I love.
And Tim Nelson behind the net, centers in front, save by Quinn on the...
Those one-on-one saves. I mean, for a lot of us, like, that's why we play goalie, like, because they're just it's that moment of being able to like totally shift the momentum of the game. Like, they're about ready to score on the goal, and you stuff them up close. Like, do you also get that same feeling?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you want to stop everything, and what I was kind of taught and internalized is you really can't think about it though, because it's always the next shot you got to worry about. You make the save or you give up a goal, it's the next one that matters. What you just did doesn't really matter. So, like John Wooden used to say, low peaks and high valleys. You want to be as even keeled as possible. And but like watching that save, I made the right turn, which is something that they taught me very well at Hopkins how to do. But I started going to my knees too early, but I got lucky.
Yeah. So making the right turn, as in like right there, boom, pivot, and you're right in
Exactly.
the right place.
Pivot right to the pipe.
Yeah, but this is almost like an interesting technique, because if you're tall, you're a tall goalie, right? Like how tall are you?
6'3".
6'3", yeah. So
I was probably 6'2" back then. Yeah.
So you can drop to your knees and still like kind of go up. I see Blaze Reardon do this, in the PLL quite a bit, where like when someone's coming around, like he'll drop to his knees and kind of cover the low shot with his knees, but then be able to reach up and get it. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting technique.
Yeah. I mean, well, the idea wasn't to drop. I mean, I would go to, back then, a lot more games on grass, and you didn't have the more dirt. So you'd have to really get that. You'd have to meet bounces where they bounced if you could. And obviously in this one, I thought he was going to go low, and he didn't. But I took advantage of my size, but the technique was actually terrible. The turn was good. The technique was terrible.
There you go. Did you, just as a general question on low shots, would you drop to your knees?
I tried not to. It was, bend your knees, lean forward, but get your stick down. Get your, the head of the stick touching the ground. But sometimes you kind of just really hard shot from the outside, kind of you're diving forward on your knees, but leading with your stick and trying to block it from behind, kind of as the backstop with your body. So it was, I don't want to say it wasn't really frowned upon. It wasn't encouraged, but I would do it. But as long as you keep your body up, your upper body kind of straight, you still have a pretty good surface area that you're covering. What I see a lot of guys is, and it's always done, is they kind of do the splits like a hockey goalie.
Yeah. And
you're really small then. And if you don't make the save initially, you're done. You can't move again. I mean, I could bounce up and I can move around and I could clear from my knees, but it's tough to clear from your butt.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, absolutely. There's a good clip here at I think it's
Dan just in front, shot and a goal by Tom Nelson.
You mentioned that clip right there just showed you kind of giving up a goal, and you mentioned like your next shot mentality. Did you have like a post-goal routine that you went through, or kind of what's going through your head? What was your process after you gave up a goal?
No, I mean that one was in my estimation, not a bad goal. I mean, you got to give up some goals.
Yeah.
I mean, Jerry Pfeiffer, I credit him with kind of teaching me that the idea is just to be consistent. Don't give up bad goals. Make the saves you should make. And then if you consistently do that, you're going to start making some saves you shouldn't make. And so that, a goal like that wouldn't have bothered me. I wouldn't have thought about it much. There is one goal that Jeff Desko scores in this game that I remember, that I end up coming off the pipe and I relaxed because I thought he was going to end up going behind the cage, and he didn't. He came underneath, and I was kind of getting ready to turn around to face behind the cage. And I moved too early, and, that kind of pissed me off. But then again, it's like, okay, I think we were still leading, because I don't think we ever were behind in that game, and just let's get the next one. Can't worry about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it.
Second goal, and it's now 6-3. Tom Nelson, shot, saved by Quinn, the rebound. Nelson, rather Quinn out of his crease, Will out of his crease, and flips it up quickly.
I love that.
There's an example of when you asked me earlier about, kind of some of the things that they taught differently. When I was in high school, I was told never to leave the goal.
Interesting.
Now, part of that was because we only had one goalie. So they didn't want me to get hurt. When I got to Hopkins, Henry Ciccarone said, if the ball's on the ground, goal line extended or below, you go for it. And if it's down on the ground in front of the cage, the defenseman's job was to put a body on a body. And since you're the extra man, not to necessarily run out of the crease. I could if I knew I could get it, but anything within reachable where I could still keep my foot in the crease. And back then, even if I had my foot in the crease and I was extended out 5 feet with my arms and legs and the stick, if they touched me, it was interference. That's not the rule today.
Right.
So with the longer stick and, pretty long legs and arms, I could reach out and drag the ball back in from, a pretty good radius. So that was something that was definitely a difference from high school to college for me.
Yeah. Interesting.
And I loved it because it was great. You get to run around and play a little. And
oh, me too. That was a huge part of my game, leaving the crease. Like I love coming out for ground balls, and I'm a smaller guy. Like I'm 5'8", so I wasn't like taking people on, but I'd use my speed and just get in there and scoop it, and then do that outlet. And then also like your outlet passes are just amazing. I mean, like you're on the run, you kind of turn back and bam, throw a lob pass right on the money, 20 yards. Is that something you worked on quite a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I played, I handled the stick a lot growing up. I mean, I was a ball boy, hours of playing catch with my brothers and I didn't always have a goalie stick in my hand. And, actually it was probably rare to have a goalie stick. I used it, an attack midfield stick much more just playing around. But my outlet passes, I think the best thing that happened, we didn't have a lot of players on my high school team. We had like 16, 18 guys, so we couldn't full field scrimmage. We did a lot of fast break drills and unsettled, but the defense had to clear it out. When we'd have battles, you have competition, and, if you lose, you run more than the offense. And so part of it is we had to clear it, but there was no one at the midfield line to throw it to. So it was a lot of it was getting it out quickly between the restraining line and the midfield line. And being taller helped. And I think that's probably also having been a lacrosse rat as a kid, as ball boy, watching college players and seeing them how they play. I was like, just seemed to make a lot of sense. So I did work on that a lot.
Yep. Love it. Awesome. I wanted to ask you about this game because you guys go up 6-0 and, out to like a real strong start. And then they come all the way back, and I think they get within 1 goal. Was there what was kind of the feeling of the team? Because sometimes when that happens, when you come out to such a big lead and then the other team comes back, it's like they've got the momentum. Was there ever a sense of like we've lost the momentum, or how are you guys feeling as a team when that happened?
Well, these were the guys we had been up 7 goals against the year before, and they come back.
You've been through it.
So they were thinking, and the crowd is thinking, here they come again. I never felt like they were going, that we were going to give up the lead. I just thought we were better than them. I thought I always felt fine. In talking to some of my teammates, even years later, that they were, worried. I think part of like what I talked about earlier, those seniors, they wouldn't be denied, kind of kicked in, and okay, we let them back in the game, and they worked their way back in the game. Every break went our way in the first 30 minutes or 25 minutes of that game. And then, some of the breaks started going their way. And, then we started playing really more kind of, because we were pretty equal teams. They were more kind of offensive minded. We were more defensive minded team, but, I felt we were the better team. So I never really harbored any serious doubt that they would beat us. I mean, I can't speak for anybody else on the team, but, we had quite a few weapons.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we had 5 Hall of Famers on that team.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. The next one I wanted to show you is the,
With 8:15 of the match, Jeske centers. In front, Nelson. Deflected by Quinn. Great save. Loose on.
I love that save. Do you remember that one? Kind of what if you want to describe the play and kind of what you were thinking on that one?
Well, I mean, I think it was 11-9, 12-10 or something at that point. I remember that I made, again, another mistake. The rule was when you go pipe to pipe, if there's a cross crease pass, you can go for it. But if you go for it, you got to make sure you get it, or while you're reaching for it, you're still turning to get to the pipe. Well, I reach for it, I miss it, and I'm not turning for the other pipe like I should have been. So again, and I turn and I get kind of lucky because Tom Nelson waited half a beat. And in my mind, we stared at each other. It probably didn't happen because it all happened so fast. And he gave me just that little bit of time to get my stick across and stop it.
I love that.
But after that one, I think Syracuse knew that it wasn't their day.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. And then, you guys end up winning the national championship. For somebody who has never experienced the thrill and everything that goes into winning a national championship, like, how do you describe that moment?
Like I said earlier, there was some relief, and but just the exhilaration of, this is a culmination of a lot of work, and a lot of sweat, and you're doing it with your buddies and your friends and your people who you spend more time with than anybody in your college career, and you get to do it in front of friends and family and stuff. So it's not as great as when your kids are born or you get married, but it's other than that, I don't know of too many feelings in my life. I've won some trials I never thought I should win. It didn't approach the feeling like this.
Yeah. I've said that before too. Like, I don't have any kids, but marriage was wonderful. But nothing in your work life is ever going to like winning a project or doing really well or knocking one out of the park is ever going to compare to this feeling of winning as like a team. And my college team never won any national championships, but we won like a league, the league championship, and still like, that feeling is just amazing.
Yeah, no, I remember winning a summer league championship in high school, how great that was. And kind of the reason you play is for that feeling.
That's right. Well, thank you so much for going through that game and kind of showing, giving us some behind the scenes. That was really awesome. I mean, we haven't even gotten into, so then you go and play for Team USA for, three different world championships and win. You've got quite the resume, Larry.
Yeah, I played lacrosse a long time with a lot of good defensemen.
There you go. There you go. Anything, about playing with Team USA that was like extremely different for you, or by that point, like you said, you've been playing lacrosse a long time, you've been playing goalie a long time. Like, I kind of know how this works. Was that kind of your feeling, or how did that go?
Well, so the first one, 86, I graduated in 85, 86. The tryouts were in 85. That was much different because it was, you're playing international rules and you're playing against all these club guys. I mean, I played summer league against them, but that was a little different. But I played for Long Island Lacrosse Club in 86. So actually, I think like 9 of the 23 guys on the team were from Long Island for US. So it wasn't that much of a difference, but just playing the international rules and playing against different styles, the way the Canadians played. Now, I had played against Team Canada when I was at Hopkins, but I'd never played against the Australians before or the English. Playing 100-minute running time game. It was back then. It was 4 25-minute quarters. Was different, and the way the penalties were. You had to run off the field. They didn't stop, blow the whistle. You just ran off, and the clock started. But it's still catching and throwing. So it was a great experience, a lot of fun, and when you play with that many good guys, you play better.
That's true. Yeah. It kind of like everyone elevates their game being around such, like future Hall of Famers and like, all Americans and best in their craft. So I think that's a good statement.
The US team tryouts were always the greatest display of lacrosse you would see.
Yeah.
Because people going all out to make the team, and everybody was good.
Right. Who are the other goalies on those teams? Do you recall?
Yeah, 86. It was John Griffin, who had played at Cornell.
Okay.
And in 90 and 94, it was Sal Lacasio and Paul Schmoller.
Late great Paul Schmoller.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I have to get Sal on the podcast one day too. I bet he'd be fun to chat with.
Yeah, Sal was unbelievable.
Yeah. You still keep in contact with any goalies?
Some guys I've coached over the years. I've coached at Hopkins for 16 to 2020. So I'd see you see people. I'm still involved. I actually ran the U.S. team tryouts, the selection committee 3 times. And I'm friends with guys I played with, but I don't make demarcations just based on what position you played. I even like a few attackmen.
All right, there you go. You heard it here first. Lax Goalie Rep Podcast. Larry Quinn likes some attackmen. I was going to mention about the coaching. So you're coaching at Hopkins. Were you, or assistant coaching, I should say, were you working with the goalies?
Yeah, I was a volunteer assistant. So I worked with the goalies. I'd get out there when I could. I coached. I graduated from law school in 88, and then I was in New York and moved to Baltimore. So 89 to 92, I was a volunteer assistant then. And then they changed the rules on the number of coaches you could have. And then I ended up doing radio for the Hopkins games for 20 years.
Oh, wow.
And then I had about 3 years off, and then I went back, and Petro asked me to be the volunteer goalie coach.
So when you're working with those goalies, like what do you focus on? I imagine at that level, like these kids are getting to Hopkins, they've got talent. How do you make them better?
I don't know if I did, but I would just kind of the same things that Jerry Pfeiffer worked with me on. Your body position, your hand position. You said it early on. See the ball, catch the ball. That's number one. Seeing the ball. I work a lot on kind of turns and going pipe to pipe and staying in position when you're moving and getting set up again. Staying balanced, keeping your hands away from your body, and try not to have your hands start to shrink in, and then you bring your body tenses up, your elbows lock, your knees lock, and then all of a sudden you can't move. And every kid's different. It's some guys need to work on body position. Other guys drop their hands all the time. Some guys always come off the pipe. Others, they always stay on the pipe. So it depends.
Yeah. What about the mental game? It sounds like, you had a strong sense of confidence, as you're playing and progressing through your career, and maybe even to this day. But what about the mental game? Is that something you ever worked with them on, or did they ever? Or do you think they kind of picked up on your sense of this is how, a goalie conducts himself, or is it something? You work with them on?
It's definitely something you have to work. I would work on with these guys. Kind of talk to them about, you got to forget about the goals and the saves. The concentration is such an important part, in my view, of playing goalie, and not getting distracted and getting caught up in the game. And I was lucky because I had great coaches, and they instilled that sort of stuff in us. And it's always the next one, and you can work on it with some guys, and some guys aren't. They get caught up in it. And the other thing to me was be prepared, be in shape, work hard during your warm-ups. Those 15 minutes a day that you get with your warm-ups, that's the most important part of your day. Work on your, what you're not good at, and correct mistakes, and everything else. You want it just to become second nature, because when the dams break, that's when people revert to their bad habits. So if you can eliminate the bad habits, that no matter what happens, guys, there's a flurry, and you don't have time to think, you just do it. And you're constantly, the repetition of doing the right thing, it just comes back. And, those are the things that I would try and teach, and would try to do.
Yeah, I love it. That's really strong. Really good advice for the young goalies listening out there. I love that. You then get elected in both Hopkins Hall of Fame and the National Lacrosse Hall of Fame. Congratulations on both those honors. That's extremely high honor, and that's an amazing achievement.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Like I said, I played with a lot of good defensemen.
There you go. It's interesting that, a lot of good goalies have this sense of, like appreciation about the defense. I think that's a leadership quality. If you ask me, it's like, I'm going to give credit to the team and kind of lift everyone up. And then if something bad happens, like, hey, I'm going to like own that and make sure that we get better. So I think that's interesting that you've got that quality.
Yeah. Look, that's, the goalie's there to clean up mistakes. And most defensemen think they don't make mistakes, but they do on occasion. They'll get beat, and that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
You bail them out, but they'll bail you out sometimes too. So it's that's a great, like, I think you had him on one of your podcasts. I saw Bob Rule. I remember years ago. Yeah. Bob Rule. He always talked about how the thing he liked about being a goalie is that you're an individual in a team sport. Mm-hmm. So you kind of get both like the individual aspects of saying being a golfer, where it's all you, but you're also relying on teammates and how they play and how you play impacts each other, which I always thought was an interesting way of looking at things.
That is interesting. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, Bob is awesome. He's a Long Island guy as well, huh?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I had him. I've talked to Bob several times. He's amazing.
He
All
can
those.
talk.
What's that?
He can talk.
He can talk. He can talk. Yeah, I don't know if I got a word in my hour podcast with him. So you've got the national championships, 2-time goalie of the year in college, Hall of Fame, Team USA victories. Is there any of those achievements that kind of stands out to you as number one? Is it the college national championship?
Yeah, the national championships in college were the hardest to achieve. I mean, we were, when you play in the U.S. team, certainly back then we were better than the other teams. I mean, Canada was very good, and especially in '90 and '94 when they had the gates. But overall, we were still a better team. We should have won. And it's such a kind of condensed format, and you're only together for a short period of time.
It's true.
But the grind that a college lacrosse season is, or any college sport, it's kind of a culmination of years of work and years of play and things like that. But you're very close with the people you do it with, and that's the best part, and it's something you get to enjoy and relive when you do a podcast like this, or you have a reunion, or you bump into people like that, and as the years go by, how much greater you become. And but it is the '84 championship to me, because it was the first one, is still probably the greatest lacrosse memory in my life.
Love it. Yeah, awesome. If you had to go back and give the younger Larry Quinn some advice, kind of knowing everything that you know now, what would that be?
I I probably would have tell myself, you need to don't let up, never let up. I kind of hit a wall like the end of my freshman year. Finals hit, and we were, I kind of struggled towards the end of my freshman year, and kind of lost a little bit of focus. And we played Towson, I think the last regular season game, and we were winning easily. And I played the second half, and I was terrible. I actually played okay in the next playoff game, but I was kind of floundering, and it was, and then when I got benched or got pulled as a starter my sophomore year, even though I didn't think I deserved it, I could see, like, okay, there was a little bit of a let up, and you can't let up. You can never lift the foot off the gas. And that was a lesson that I learned, kind of in my view, kind of a hard way. And, and don't take opportunities for granted.
I love it. Well, Larry, thank you so much for chatting with me. This has been tons of fun. I know you're no longer Larry Quinn, the Hall of Fame goalie. You're the partner at a law firm. So I know I'd like to sit here and chat lacrosse goalie all day, but I'm sure you got some stuff to get back to. But I just want to say thanks for chatting, sharing your knowledge, and kind of going through those stories. This was tons of fun.
Well, my pleasure. Actually, I'm no longer a partner in the law firm. I left. I'm of counsel to my law firm. I left my law firm, and 5 years ago, I now run a company.
Even more responsibility, huh?
Yeah. But no, this was fun, and I'm going to go check out some of your other podcasts and see what some of these other guys had to say.
All right, sounds good. Who do you think I should interview? I got Sal Lacasio on the list. Who else would you put on the list?
Yeah, Sal would be a really good one. Trying to think. You got Batch, right?
Yeah, I just did that one. That one's coming out in a couple weeks.
I saw you did Quint, Billy Day. I mean, Mike Federico, who was, if you want an old timer, he was 5 years before me at Hopkins, 3-time goalie of the year, 3-time national champion.
Yeah. There we go. That's a great one. I'm gonna reach out and see if you got his contact info after.
Yeah, I do. Jesse Schwartzman, who was
yeah,
guy. I mean, Jesse was he had a very interesting career. 2 national titles. I'm trying to think people who, like the club guys. Did you do Bill Baroza?
No.
He was he played at Roanoke, was on the U.S. team in '82. He'll talk your ear off.
That's good. That's what you want with podcasts. That's
yeah.
No, here's the ideal. Quint, I gotta say, listen to that episode. It's unbelievable. It's the best work. I mean, he talks for a living. He's a Long Island guy. Like he's just full of lacrosse stories, and he's awesome. He was tons of fun.
And some of them might even be true.
Some of them might even be true. I love it. Well, Larry Quinn, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was a blast, and we'll be in touch.
All right. Thanks, Damon. Take care.